Ninjakees. Yo ninjas, welcome back to the show. Today we're gonna talk about 9 pro tips for writing and storyboarding your manga like a master. So writing a manga story script is a mix of storytelling, character development and visual scene planning. Here is a step-by-step guide to help you craft a compelling manga script. And also while listening to this, I'm also drawing my own manga as we speak. So let's go. Number 1. Develop your core idea. Start with a high concept idea that sets your story apart. Ask yourself, what is the demographic? Like shonen, shoujo, seinen, etc. For example, shonen is a demographic, not a genre. It refers to the manga and anime primarily targeted at young boys, typically ages from 12 to 18 years old. So why is shonen a demographic? It's based on the intended audience, not the story type. So shonen manga is usually published in magazines aimed at young boys like Weekly Shonen Jump, which can also include multiple genres such as action, adventure, comedy, fantasy, sci-fi, and even romance. For example, like in Bakuman, where there was a little bit of romance in there, but also with a lot of shonen action integrated in it. Another question to ask yourself is, what is the genre? Here are a few examples of shonen series in different genres. So the ones in action/fantasy are like Naruto, One Piece, Demon Slayer, and with sci-fi, Dr. Stone, Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan might for some also be considered more of a seinen because it also blends in a bit with some elements in the story that makes it a bit more darker than shonen. So it could be a gray area, but in its essence it's still a shonen because it was published in a shonen magazine. You have also the sports genres like Haikyuu and Blue Lock, a romance comedy like Nisekoi, Kami Can't Communicate. And another question to ask yourself is, what is the main theme? Like friendship, revenge, redemption, adventure. What makes your story unique? You can also use a special technique called mind mapping. This is for infinite ideas. In the center, write your manga title or simply write manga, something like that. Then create branches with bubbles and lines to connect any ideas related to making your manga. Now, this technique is called mind mapping, which helps in brainstorming ideas and discovering limitless possibilities. Through this process, you might come up with things you wouldn't have thought before. So basically, in this mind mapping session, just write anything and connect it to your center goal. This is for anything, by the way, not only manga, but it's a great way to explore ideas that you might have not thought up before doing this type of session of creating and brainstorming ideas. Number 2, create a strong premise. A premise is a short summary of your story. It should include the protagonist, their goal, the conflicts/obstacles they face. For example, a teenage outcast discovers he is the reincarnation of a legendary warrior and must fight against demonic forces to save the world. Things like that. Or you have a boy that wants to create the greatest party in existence and therefore he has to beat the other party stars. So there are many examples for this. And then write your own similar kind of example for this. Also, you could think about it like an elevator pitch. So let's say you're in the elevator, you have to pitch your story to someone in a few seconds. Have a short premise, how you would describe your story. Keep it short and concrete. And also clearly easy to be able to understand what the story is about. Number 3, develop characters. Each character should have a strong personality. How do they act? What are their quirks? They need a clear motivation. Why do they do what they do? What are their strengths and weaknesses? This also makes them more relatable. And also the visual design. Even if you're not the artist, describe their look, how they look like. So those are a few examples of developing your characters. Number 4, world building. Your manga setting is crucial. Think about like the world structure. Is it fantasy, modern, cyberpunk, medieval? Many worlds to explore, and which one do you want to explore? Also, what are the rules of the world, like the magic system, like devil fruits or powers or like quirks, the technology, the social order, how do all these factions in the world work? And of course also landmarks and locations, like Where is it? In a school, schools, cities, dungeons, on another planet, in space? It can be anything. So write down what kind of world your characters live in and how the world works. It could also be like the real world, and then it's just more like a slice of life. Number 5. Outline the plot. So you could use a 3-act structure, like the beginning, the start, and introduction. So introduce the protagonist, the main character, and the world, and then set up a conflict, the problem of the story. So what is the problem that the main character has, or the world, or whatever, and what has the main character, to do with this? Then you have the middle, the center, development, or the protagonist, the main character faces challenges, or they grow stronger, they fail maybe and grow stronger from that. And when the main character grows stronger and then confronts a major problem that he has to solve. And then the last part, the ending, the climax, the resolution, so the final battle, the revelation, the emotional payoff. So basically solving the final problem. So let's say you have an asshole at the beginning, the asshole does shit, and then at the end you have to beat the asshole in the face as a final boss, and then the ending could be defeating the final asshole. Before maybe also you have smaller assholes in the story and then the bigger asshole. And then you have to beat the final asshole boss, and that could be like the ending. So what is the end of your story? You can also use, for example, the shonen formula, like number 1, an ordinary life. Number 2, inciting an incident. Number 3, training / power discovery. Number 4, first conflict. Number 5, a bigger villain appears. And then number 6, an ultimate showdown. And 7, the final one, the resolution and future setup. So these are also ways to use the shonen formula, for example, like this. So these could be some of the ways how to outline the plot. Number 6, write the manga script. A manga script is written in a format that combines dialogue, panel descriptions, and visual cues. For example, page 1, panel 1, you have a wide shot with a ruined city with smoke rising in the distance. And then the narrator says, "Once this city was peaceful." And then you have panel 2, close-up of the protagonist's face, eyes filled with determination. And then here you have a thinking bubble, the protagonist thinking, "I will make them pay." And then panel 3, dynamic action shot, the protagonist dashes forward with a sword drawn. Sound effect, swoosh. And then use short, impactful dialogue. So manga relies about 80% on the visuals, so don't over-explain with words. Because it should not be a reading book, the words added to the manga are extra details for the visuals, the drawings. Like Akira Toriyama said in one of his interviews somewhere, about 80-85% of manga is mostly visual. So that's the most important part. Through the visuals alone, you should be able to understand the story about 85% or 80%, so don't over-explain too much. I think some manga sometimes rely too much on their words versus the visuals. So they talk too much, but not show too much. So that's, I think personally, that's an important part also in the story to apply to your manga. It's like show, don't tell. Well, of course, telling for the details. So describe each panel clearly, but also leave room for the artist's creativity if you work with an artist. So if you are the writer. But if you are the artist already, then you should know that. Include sound effects like boom, yeah, many things. So those are a few examples of writing the manga script. Number 7, work with an artist if needed. So if you are not a drawer, if you don't draw yourself, write clear descriptions for the panels, communicate emotions and actions effectively, and also be open to collaboration. Artists may have great visual storytelling ideas. So if you're not a drawer, these are some of those tips for if you work with an artist. Some mangaka are like working with 2 teams, like with Death Note. They have a writer and then the artist. Also with Dr. Stone, where Boichi is the artist. With One Punch Man, where one is the artist / story writer, and then Yusuke Murata making a more detailed version the way he draws. because I don't think One Punch Man would be this successful without Yusuke Murata's artwork. Even though the original One Punch Man manga was already read online, but the drawings weren't well defined as Yusuke Murata's, I think personally. So yeah, if you are the writer, here are some tips for that, to also work with an artist. Number 8, revise and improve. So check the pacing. Does each chapter of the manga keep the reader engaged? Polish the dialogue? Does it sound natural? Ensure clarity. Does each panel make sense visually? So the whole flow of your manga panels, the pages, are these pages page turners, or questions to be asked? Do you want to flip the page and read more? Of course, now in the digital age, people also scroll, but in the end it's sort of the same in a way. But yeah, are your readers engaged? And that's an important part to ask yourself, and also think and be the reader, and then think like one. Do you personally want to turn the page? And of course you can ask maybe friends, family, or someone you know to check your storyboarding / Nemu before going to the final stages, because when you inked everything already, it might be harder to make a final version if the flow is not correct yet. So revise, improve, feedback to yourself, or if you work with someone, to get some feedback before polishing everything to the final stages. So yeah, these are the tips of revise and improvements to your manga. Number 9, changed by the world versus changing the world. Also, an important question to think about is, do you want your main character to be changed by the world, or the main character to be changing the world? For example, main characters that change the world. These characters shape the world around them through their sheer will, strength, or dreams. They don't adapt to the world adapts to them. For example, like Goku with Dragon Ball. Goku doesn't care about society's rules or expectations, he just seeks strength. In doing so, he constantly pushes others beyond their limits and reshapes power structures like Saiyan race, gods, etc., Super Saiyan. With Luffy from One Piece, Luffy doesn't change for anyone. He follows his dreams of becoming the Pirate King. And his presence alone shakes the entire world, inspiring others and bringing down oppressive systems. You also have Saitama from One Punch Man. His power is so overwhelming that he renders the world's struggles meaningless, forcing people to rethink what strength really means. We also have Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan, who starts as a victim of the world but eventually forces change on a massive world-ending scale. Though this is a bit darker than like Luffy or Goku, for example. Then we have Asta from Black Clover. He's born powerless in a magic-driven world, yet through sheer determination and anti-magic abilities, he breaks the system that once looked down on him. And we have Yusuke Urameshi from Yu Yu Hakusho, who starts as a delinquent, but through his power and attitude he changes both the human and demon worlds. So these are some examples of characters that change the world versus the reverse. And then here are some characters that are changed by the world. So these characters start as products of their environment. So they struggle to fit in their world before growing and rising above their circumstances. For example, Naruto. Naruto is constantly influenced by others like Iruka, Jiraiya, Pain, etc. He only changes the world after being changed by it. And then we have Deku from My Hero Academia. He starts off weak in a world where strength defines status. He adapts to the hero system and learns from mentors before becoming a symbol of change. Then we also have Tanjiro Kamado from Demon Slayer. His entire life is shaped by tragedy, forcing him to become a demon slayer and adapt to the world's harsh reality. We have Shinji Ikari from Neon Genesis Evangelion. In an extreme case, he's completely controlled by the world and the people around him, never truly taking control. Then we have Thorfinn from Vinland Saga, who starts as a child of war, deeply shaped by violence and revenge, only to spend his life trying to break free from the cycle of killing. And then we have Kaneki Ken from Tokyo Ghoul, a normal guy who is forcibly turned into a ghoul. He struggles to adapt and goes through multiple painful transformations before truly shaping his world. And also we have a gray area section with a bit of both. So these characters start off being shaped by their world, but eventually grow into powerful figures who change it. For example, Gon Freaks from Hunter x Hunter. At first he's like Luffy, carefree and adventurous. But over time, the cruel reality of the world, especially like the Chimera Ant arc, deeply changes him. And then we also have Edward Elric from Full Metal Alchemist. Driven by his own mistakes, he learns from the world, but also challenges its biggest truths, like the alchemy, equivalent exchanged, etc. Renkin Jutsu. And of course we have Yagami Light from Death Note, who starts as a student, but once he gets the Death Note, he actively bends the world to his will, and until the world pushes back. So yeah, these are some of the characters, for example, changed by the world versus changing the world. So what do you want your main character to be? Do you want him to change the world, or be changed by the world, or maybe a bit of both? So that's an important question to ask yourself when writing your main character, creating your main character. What kind of main character this is. So some of the final thoughts are like born strong, driven by their own will, they change the world, like Goku, Luffy, Eren, Asta. Or born weak, shaped by hardship, they are changed by the world, like Naruto, Deku, Tanjiro, Kaneki. Or they start weak but later take control, a mix of both, like Gon, Ed, Light. So this is one important question to ask yourself when writing or creating your main characters with words on your storyboard and /Nemu. So yeah, what kind of character are you creating for your manga? How is your main character? Does he change the world? Is he changed by the world? Or maybe a bit of both? Let me know. And here's the final tip. Read and analyze manga. Study successful manga for storytelling techniques. Important to pay attention to the panel layout, how the action flows, dialogue and pacing. Look and seek how the professionals do it is also an important aspect to implement those techniques, elements and storytelling to your own work. You could, for example, choose 3 of your favorites and make a mix of it to study them, see how they work, and maybe also have a few different types of, in this case, manga creators that are professionals who are already successful in the world of manga. Study them, apply it to your own work, learn from the techniques, see how they do it and apply it to your own work. For example, I also learned from Berserk or One Punch Man or whatever, like how they shade, like the certain line techniques, and then apply it to your own work. Or like with One Piece and Dragon Ball, for example, the way how they use screen tone, like not over screen toning it like some other manga. It really depends on what kind of style you want to have in your own manga. Maybe if you're a beginner, you should experiment first, or just important is also to experiment in general to improve your manga skills and evolve your manga skills over time. Because as you can see with, for example, Dragon Ball at the beginning towards the ending of Dragon Ball, the original manga, you can see a bit of the evolution of it. And also with One Piece, for example, of earlier One Piece to later One Piece, or earlier Naruto to later Naruto, Bleach. Any longer running series, you can also see this, for example, with how at the beginning they drew in a certain way and how it evolves into the future. Maybe some things are for the better versus other things. Like, for example, some people say that the One Piece manga now is a bit more crowded or a bit more too busy than the earlier One Piece, for example. So those are some of the topics that you can think about, and if you also want this type of stuff in your own manga or not, and learn from the professionals who already made it, are making it. So these are some of those tips to read and analyze other manga to improve your own manga. Next to this, you can also look at movies, for example, or other visual storytelling media, how they do it, and maybe you can get some elements of that applied to your own work. Alright ninjas, these are the 9 pro tips for writing and storyboarding your manga like a master. Let me know if this helps for your manga or helping you with making your manga. If you have any other tips that I left out or forgot in this video, just let me know in the comments as well. And yeah, I wish you the best. Good luck with your manga. If you have your manga, just tell in the comments your title of your manga and where people can read it. If you want to share your manga or you have any other questions or comments about this topic, just let me know in the comments as well. Alright ninjas, thank you very much for joining once again. NINJABOX ishhh, and see you ninjas the next time. Ninjakees out. Ninjakees. Thanks for joining once again, Ninjas, NINJABOX, and see you ninjas next time. Ninjakees out.